Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Film Seizure. I am Jeff Arbuckle, and we are about to kick off a whole month of Frontier Justice Western Month stuff. We didn't know what to call it, but that's what it is. With me, as always, are the giggling duo of Jason Oliver. Jason, how's it going?
Howdy.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Howdy, partner.
Howdy, partner.
And also Chuck Moore. Chuck, how's it going?
What's up?
That's exactly
That's
what
a cowboy thing, right?
That's exactly what Cowboy said. That's exactly right. Very good. But so we're kicking things off here with a pretty darn good one. I think we probably have a whole slate of good ones.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
We are kicking things off pretty high, if you will, pretty high on the list with High Noon, directed by Fred Zinnemann and produced by
Zinnemann.
yes.
Just like the
Zinnemann toast
very
creamer.
spicy.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Anyway, yes, produced by Stanley Kramer. Stanley Kramer and Fred Zinnemann made some pretty good movies in their time.
Yep.
Pretty good. This is from 1952. Now, interestingly, about High Noon, this was one of the very first round of movies that were selected by the Library of Congress to be preserved. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, Duke.
Factoids, we got them.
We win. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about what the Duke thinks about this here in just a moment. But this is pretty good. I will also say that the Soviet Union didn't care much for this movie because it was a little too individualistic for their taste.
Which is ironic, right?
Right. Well,
for reasons we'll get into.
Everybody apparently hated this movie except for everybody.
Interesting.
It's kind of wild that it's the favorite movie of both Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton. That's pretty wild.
That's truthful? They both love this movie? That's interesting.
I mean, I think you can look at this from a couple of different ways because when you really get down to the heart of what this movie is really about, which is one guy just trying to do the right thing, you can read this in two different ways that I think both sides would say, see, we're right. And then, it's kind of one of those interesting movies where you do get one of those one man trying to do everything sort of things. It's
not for lack of trying.
Oh boy, does he? Oh boy, yeah. Well, that's true. I wonder if, to a certain extent, and I don't know why I suddenly just thought of this, so maybe I'll throw this out here and ask you guys what you guys think. But I wonder if the people who made Falling Down kind of thought they were making a 90s version of High Noon.
I can't really answer that because I haven't seen Falling Down in a long time. But I don't see... Well, maybe. I mean, Kane is a guy that's being pushed to his brink, but he's not really breaking necessarily.
No.
Right? If he broke, he'd probably kill the whole town instead.
Yeah.
So he
at
keeps
times
his wits
I kind of
about
wish
him.
he was, that he was going to do that. But
he does keep his wits about him. So I don't see a similarity, at least with those two things, which is really kind of a key element of Falling Down, right?
Sure.
That he just goes ballistic on everybody.
Right.
But yeah.
But I could see somebody saying, taking that to the next logical conclusion of, one guy fixes everything the bad way. But I don't know. I just kind of thought about that because every now and then that kind of floats into the ether. And it's like, I don't know if Falling Down is the great movie people think it is.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but I never really had a whole lot of admiration for it.
Yeah.
What about High Noon? Did you like High Noon?
This is something we got a whole lot of admiration. That was Chuck beat me to the transition. Is this a first time viewing for you guys?
No, not for me, but it had been a while.
Definitely for me. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
Probably a good 20 years since I've seen it. I got like a early DVD release of this that I still have. And it might have been the first time I saw it. It might have been the second time. I don't know. It's one of those movies that's kind of always been with me.
I wouldn't be entirely surprised if I didn't see this like when Westerns aired constantly on weekends and they would just be on my TV, but I have no specific memory of it. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
I watched
that's
a lot of Westerns growing up because my dad liked them. So I'm pretty sure I saw it for the first time as a kid.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the same boat with you, Chuck. I'm sure I have seen clips, or I mean, this is just one of those things you always knew about. You know, it's like it's Gary Cooper and High Noon. You know, it's kind of part of the zeitgeist. But but I don't remember any specific time except for the other day. Um, actually sitting down and watching this. Um,
I do know that this movie for a long time was my only real frame of reference for Quakerism.
that's weird
Yeah.
because Quaker Oats was mine. It's the guy who looks like Benjamin Franklin.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and what's funny is that do you really learn what Quakerism is in this?
Nope, not really. Just
Not-
that they're pacifists. That's
at least enough for one person to be a pacifist. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a absolute tenet or not, but we know at least the one person in this movie that's the only Quaker I can ever say for sure I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, I don't even know if Quakerism really includes pacifism, but it might. I guess
But-
I'm not gonna.
But,
Yeah.
but what about oatmeal? Does it include oatmeal?
Yes, it does include oatmeal. George Fox loved oatmeal. He was the first Quaker, I think,
well,
or one
I
of.
think that Quakers were famous for refusing to participate in wars. So they're like the first conscientious objector, right?
Sure.
Wasn't
They also
Wasn't that
refuse.
one guy in that bad Mel Gibson war movie? Wasn't he a Quaker?
What bad?
The one that came out like
Are you talking about
a
the
few
one that
years
was
ago.
actually nominated for Oscars?
Yeah, and it wasn't very good.
Well, I hadn't seen it because
Jesse Garfield, right? Wasn't he in it? Was he the main guy?
well, possibly, but also Andrew Garfield.
Andrew. Where the fuck did I get Jesse from?
Oh gosh, we are really hitting it on all
Oh my
cylinders here.
goodness. But
Yeah.
Speaking
anyway,
of cylinders, that's also something else the Quakers help with is to oil your cylinders. Okay, I'm done with that. I'm done with this.
what?
Quaker State.
Oh, okay. All right. Holy
Anyway,
shit.
yeah, so let's talk about the cast of this movie because this is pretty good cast.
It's
This
pretty
is,
notable. Pretty notable.
obviously Gary Cooper, he won the Oscar for Best Actor for this. But the very first shot is Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, Lee Van Cleef. Wow, he's a bad guy.
Yeah, it's his very first movie and the only movie where he doesn't have one speaking line.
I was just about to say he doesn't say a word in this movie, does he?
Nope.
He's just a face. He's
Not
just
a thing.
a Van Cleef.
Uh-huh.
Yep. You got Lloyd Bridges in this movie too.
Yeah, sure do.
Lon Chaney Jr.,
Mhm.
which really kind of shows you Lon Chaney Jr. was much, much more than a monster guy. He was actually a really good actor. Unfortunately, he got typecast a lot once he started in on the Universal movies.
So he's the old guy that Kane
Yeah.
goes to visit towards the end, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
the
he's in
former
makeup.
Marshal.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
definitely in makeup because I don't even think he looked like that when he died in 1970 or whatever year it was. That I think it was 6970, somewhere around there. You got Harry Morgan. He's the partner from Dragnet.
Oh yeah.
Thomas Mitchell. two-time Oscar nominee from Gone with the Wind, Stagecoach, It's a Wonderful Life, and then of course Grace Kelly,
Yes.
the one of two important ladies in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I do like that the other lady, what was her
Ramirez?
Katie.
yes,
Katie.
Her,
Katie
Gerardo,
Uardo.
probably just Gerardo.
That's the actress, right?
Gerardo.
She's
Gerardo.
Ramirez in the
Yeah, Helen Ramirez.
Yeah, Helen Ramirez. I kind of
She
like
did
that
a lot of
because
westerns.
the Helen Ramirez kind of reminds me of uh the because I assume that she's a madam. I mean, she certainly runs the hotel and the bar.
Right.
I suspect that she's also a madam, which is very common trope in there. It's like the marshal or the sheriff is always in good with the madam.
Right.
And hey, man, Gary Cooper is scoring the ladies well into his middle ages.
Man,
No
Grace
kidding.
Kelly is beautiful in this movie.
I mean, when wasn't she? But yes. I mean, she was only 21 in this, I think. And even in black and white, just radiant.
The there's one guy in this is the snarkiest hotel desk clerk ever.
Yeah.
He cracked me up every time he said something to a character. Because it was always like he was like the gossip bitch, you know. It's like, oh man, this guy's gonna have something to say about whatever's going on here, and he was such a turd at times.
Oh, here's a weird thing. Sorry to go
No, go
back
ahead.
to Katie Wardo. She was married to Ernest Borgnine
Oh,
for 4 years.
wow.
Yeah.
Ernest Borgnine and Lee Van Cleef were in a movie together, Escape from New York.
Yeah.
But yeah, that what, did you say bar or hotel owner, whatever that guy is? He
No, he was a
cracked me
clerk.
up.
Yeah,
He's the hotel
he was the
clerk.
hotel clerk.
Then
Yeah.
why did he care so much about the
for,
business, which is kind of
Because
funny.
that was his job. That was his livelihood.
He was still getting paid.
Well,
He's
probably not as well as he could.
Yeah, I guess not.
Don't really get raises when business is bad.
But he
Right.
was funny and snarky for sure.
when she comes in and he's like, "Oh, you're not here with with the Gary Cooper character." She's like,
Kane.
"No, Kane," and she's like, "No." And he's like, "Interesting." It's like, you fucking asshole.
Also, generally, probably a person in that position would work on tips too.
Yeah, he probably does get tips, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but his attitude's not helping him get any of those tips. I'm telling you that much.
No,
No.
definitely not.
But no, yeah, this is a movie that's full of colorful characters.
Mhm.
And they're all flawed in
Yeah.
a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, the movie pretty much goes in real time, doesn't it?
Yeah, but pretty much. Yeah.
Pretty close.
Yeah. It's got to be pretty darn close. Yeah.
Because
in real time.
the movie opens with Gary Cooper and Grace Kelly getting married.
Yep.
At the same time that they're getting married, there is Frank Miller's gang.
Ben Miller, Pearson, Colby.
Yep.
Yep.
And they are getting together because Frank Miller is coming to town on the 12 o'clock train. And the Will Kane, the marshal, Gary Cooper, he is retiring, basically. He's getting married. They're packing up and they're leaving town, and they're just going to, I guess,
Open a
farm.
shop.
Or
They're gonna-
open a shop, yeah.
Yep.
So he's so basically he's done with the lawman shtick, and the guy comes in, interrupts basically the celebration after the wedding, and says, "Hey, by the way, Frank Miller got released, and he's coming, and we suspect that his posse is with him." And so,
Not suspect, they know. I mean,
Well,
they're hanging
yeah.
around where that guy is.
Yeah, the posse basically seen the posse riding in town to the train station, And basically they're waiting for Frank, who's coming on the noon train.
Right. And now Kane doesn't really necessarily, like, at first, it's like the whole thing is, why don't you just go ahead and get out of here and just, just be done with this, move on. And he thinks about it and he's like, well, I don't know, maybe maybe jail has changed him. Sometimes prison can change a man. And it's like, no, not this guy. This guy is bad. He is real bad. And so so basically the majority of this movie is told from two different sides converging into basically town square. One is the inevitable arrival of Frank Miller. And, when he's told about this, he checks his watch and it's like 11:15. So he's got an hour and 15 minutes to figure out, is he going to stay? Is he going to go? If he does stay, is he going to raise some deputies to basically defend the town? And if they have to, kill Miller and his gang.
Yeah, and there's an important note here too, because when he's retiring as marshal, the new marshal is arriving the next day. So there's 24 hours with no marshal.
Of no law. Yeah.
His friends, like the judge, and I can't remember who the other guy is or what his function is in the town, are basically like, get the hell out of here, pat him on the back, throw him on his stagecoach, and go. And at this point, you're thinking, okay, they have this man's best interest in mind, right? They don't want trouble for him. He's retired. Why should he have to deal with this? Not really the case, as we find out later. But Kane does leave for some amount of time, right? And this is kind of when we meet Lloyd Bridges, whose name I can never remember, Marshal Harvey. His name is Harvey Pell.
Yeah, Deputy Marshal Harvey Pell, who thinks he's going to take over, or who wanted to take over. He's kind of a jerk.
Not kind of.
Well, he is a jerk.
He's a jerk.
He picked the wrong day to stop sniffing glue.
Yes, he did. Oh my God, I had to stop every time he joined on screen. I was thinking of like Hot Shots or Airplane or something. Like my memory of Lloyd Bridges is permanently his elder comedic career. Same thing would happen if I watched something with Leslie Nielsen in it.
Oh yeah, don't watch Forbidden Planet, because you're not going to be used to him being the Captain Kirk style hero.
I would probably just find it hilarious. But yeah, Harvey is really upset that he wasn't made the actual marshal of the town, and he's kind of talking shit like, oh, he's scared, he's running. And Ramirez is like, he's not scared. There's no way he's scared of Frank Miller. Like, it's just not his deal anymore.
Right.
He should leave. And she gets upset with him over the whole thing, and you don't really know why at this point either.
Yeah, it's important to note that Helen Ramirez has a interesting list of former paramours, let's put it that way.
Sure.
Because she was at one point in time the girlfriend of Frank Miller, and then the girlfriend of Will Kane, and now the girlfriend of Harvey Pell. So she's got all sorts of information about all sorts of interesting or important people that are involved with this story.
Yeah, it seems like she's a powerful woman, obviously, but it seems like she attaches herself to whoever the most powerful person in the town is or will be.
Yeah, and she is, and she's going to leave town because she suspects that Frank Miller is going to destroy this town.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's going to be either Will Kane stays and dies, or Will Kane leaves and there's no law to stop Miller's gang.
Right.
And at that point, she immediately hurriedly sells her hotel and is planning on literally getting out of Dodge. So she's basically going to be on the next train, which is what Will and Amy plan to be on anyway.
Yes. And were they going to the train? I wasn't clear on that. because he even said it, even if we get an hour away from here, it doesn't matter. 100 miles doesn't matter. He's gonna come find us, right?
He's right. That's his right. He's got a Will, I think, has kind of dueling um uh uh intentions here. In one, he doesn't want to see the people of the town suffer because he runs away or because he leaves. But then, yeah, you're right. He knows it doesn't really matter. As the moment that somebody who knows Frank Miller knows where Will Kane is, it's going to start all over again.
Right. And if he stays in the town, he has control over when Will shows up. Like he knows. Like there's no surprise here. Will is going to be, or not Will, excuse me, Frank. He knows when Frank's going to show up, so he has
Frank's
control.
On the 12 o'clock train. Yep.
Yeah. If he leaves town, he'll never know when he's going to show up, and his life will be like this whole hour of the film, which is kind of masterfully stressful. And anxious.
God, and you feel it. Yeah, let's talk about Gary Cooper, because what I kind of jokingly say that Gary Cooper, the man, didn't win the Oscar for Best Actor. His facial expressions did. And you feel like you know exactly what he's thinking, exactly what he's feeling. And all he does is he basically just kind of moseys on up to the camera, and he just, like, his face is telling you everything. He doesn't have to say that many lines in this movie.
Yeah, I don't think he talks a whole lot. Like, he's very few, his words are very few and far between.
But they're very pointed, too.
Yeah.
There's a scene in the church where he's asking the churchgoers for help. Right?
Yeah.
Basically, he's like, hey, this is what's happening. You might not realize it because you've been in church, but Frank Miller's coming back, and I need your help to defend the town. And there's a moment where
like a half dozen people stand up and is like, we're ready. Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. Some people are like, yep, we'll help. Other people aren't. There's sort of this public debate, but then one guy stands up, and it seems like this is going to be like the real rallying moment, right? Like he starts talking about how great a marshal Will Kane is, probably the best they'll ever have. Great man, and you can kind of see it in Gary Cooper's face that he's like, yes, I'm getting the support that I need. This is great. And then slowly the narrative of this guy's speech changes. And you see it, all of it drain out of Gary Cooper's face. This optimism is now like despair, and it's masterful acting.
Yeah. Because really the main the point for basically the final hour, the 11th hour, if you will, in this is Kane is not going to leave, despite his new wife saying you gotta leave. Like, this is insane. You retired. You're done. Let's go. And she, being a pacifist, is not pleased with the fact that he's basically saying, I'm going to get into the shootout, and I'm going to have to kill 4 men today. I mean, talk about was four funerals and a wedding on that day. But that's his, and she is not happy about that. So he's already dealing with that. It's like, man, they didn't even take time to start arguing as a married couple. They are instantly in the muck there. Then on top of that, he has a deputy marshal that he can't trust, that there's who would rather call him basically a coward than to help him, which shows how cowardly he is too.
Well, yeah, his whole rationale was that Kane did not support him as being the marshal, and he's like, I had nothing to do with that. Yeah. Like, you can believe what you want to believe, but I had nothing to do with that. And at that point, Harvey basically retires. He puts his tin star down. Yeah. Right? They always refer to it as a tin star, which I guess like tin is easy to crumble, probably. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting the way they refer to the lawmen in this movie. Yeah. But he basically retires. He's like, I quit. You're screwed. So now it's just you.
Right. And it's like he goes to the mayor the mayor's like, you gotta go. It's like, well, why even bother? He's like even packing up his shit.
That's the judge.
Or
But
that's
yes.
yeah, that's you're right. You're
Yeah,
right.
it's the
I'm sorry,
judge.
the judge. Yeah, because because he goes into his office, which is the justice of the peace. Yeah, and he's like he's packing up. He's leaving. And
Well,
it's
that's
like
the theme of this movie, right? Every town will crumble. Every situation you're in will fall apart, and self-preservation is what you need to survive, right? Like even Ramirez is like, this town's going to fold. I'm going to go find a new one
yeah,
and do it all over again. The judge is like, I've been a judge before. I'll be a judge again. So he's done this in multiple towns. Like the West just isn't getting settled, right?
right.
Continues to fall apart around them.
Right.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly right. But but then he's, it's like he doesn't want to basically do anything. He's like, you remember Frank was sitting in that chair and what he said about how you're going to come back or how he's going to come back and he's going to kill you. And it's kind of a cool, it zooms in on the chair.
Dun, dun, dun.
And then, you hear the voiceover of that moment when he was found guilty. And so and then, he's like, he just wants to find somebody who's going to help. The only guy who will help him, there are two guys who will help him, a 16-year-old boy and a one-eyed drunk.
Well, he has help from another man for most of the movie.
Well, yeah, he's got the pledge of hope, but when
Yeah.
he finds out that he's the only one, he quickly quits.
Self-preservation once again.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like, because he goes to Lon Chaney Jr. and he's like, man, I'm old. You're just going to be worried about me, and that's going to end up getting you killed. And it's like, okay, that's probably true. In this case, because he does.
He's
seem
also
like
got arthritis. I don't even think he can hold a gun.
Yeah, he's like basically, it's like my arthritis makes me useless to you. My age and arthritis means you're going to die if you rely on me.
Right.
And so he so Will is just like he just leaves immediately to go find the next person to tell him no, basically.
Yeah, his best friend won't even come to the door, sends his wife to the door.
Yeah, that is insane. It's like, just tell him I'm not here, tell him I'm at church.
You have half the town, well, I don't know if it's half the town, but a lot of the town is upset that Kane sent Frank Miller away in the first place, right? They're mad at him for it.
Yeah.
And they're not going to help him. The rest of the town is like, I don't even know how to use a gun.
Yeah.
This is
why
my
we should have
fight.
more deputies.
Yes, exactly. So the town is in some kind of turmoil, and half of them don't want to save it. For some reason, they want the lawlessness of the wild
I
West.
think it's that you've got like your disreputable folk who probably have less professional opportunity but more criminal opportunity with Frank.
Right.
And those are most of the people who are hanging out in the saloon. And then you've got the so called respectable folk who are mostly
the
at church.
self-righteous ones.
Yeah. Who are pretty divided, but are ultimately easily convinced not to get involved.
Exactly, and that is,
and they don't necessarily believe that Frank coming back is good for them, but they're kind of hedging their bets a little bit because they think that if Will Kane isn't there, then there won't be a problem. That Frank's just going to go after him. Right, and it would leave the town alone, which is pretty shitty. They're essentially just leaving him hanging out to dry. Either way.
He's a sacrificial lamb.
Right,
and they keep saying with the one guy, which is ultra important, the guy who makes that speech in the church that you think is going to be, let's go, rah rah, is like, if the people of the North are thinking about us, and they're going to send business down here, and that is going to be good for us. If they find out that there was another shooting here, then goodbye to all that.
Yeah, fighting in the streets and all of that, right?
Yeah, if they hear about any of that stuff, which at this moment I was pretty relatively certain what the end of the film was going to be like. It didn't happen. We can talk about that later. But
Okay.
yeah, they're like, we can't have a shootout here. That'll destroy this town forever, basically.
And it's interesting because Gary Cooper, Will Kane, he isn't really staying for the town at this point. He's staying, like we said earlier, or Jeff said earlier, because this is an inevitability. He's got to face this guy, and he might as well face him, with that immediacy in front of him
On his terms.
on his terms in his town. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because at this point, it's like, man, fuck these people. They don't want my help. Okay, they don't want to help themselves. Okay, they don't want to help me. Fuck them, right? But and he's pretty much. I mean, that's pretty well stated how he feels about the town at the end of the movie. But yeah, he's kind of like he's a little bit put upon. He's not really a hero. He's not doing this to be a hero. He's doing this because he kind of has to, and he has to face the music, and he doesn't want to run his entire life.
Right.
Yeah,
we also go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was going to say it's like, this is kind of a this is where I kind of thought it's like reading some of the Hollywood Babylon around this movie.
Well, there's a lot.
Let's go ahead and bring in one thing about this, and that is the immense hatred that John Wayne has for this movie.
Yeah.
He was originally offered the role of Will Kane. He
Yep.
turned it down flat, saying this is obviously a parable on the House Un-American Activities Committee,
Right.
and anti blacklisting, which he was greatly in favor of.
Yep.
And his friend is Gary Cooper.
Yeah.
They were very good friends.
Gary Cooper was one of the first members of that organization in Hollywood that supported
Yep.
the blacklisting. Yeah, I mean, but Gary Cooper saw it he saw it in a lot of different ways. Gary Cooper, I think it would probably be fair to say, was a much more reasonable and nuanced man than John Wayne was.
Yeah, because it just kind of turns out that John Wayne's an asshole. Anyway,
Yeah.
he so one of the things that he claimed that High Noon was, quote, the most un-American thing I've ever seen. To which every scene we've just described is the fucking most American thing.
Yeah.
So much so I'm wearing a Captain America shirt today to record this
So
episode.
is
And so is Chuck.
Yeah.
And
I
God
feel
damn
left
it.
out.
Yeah, I know. Where's your American
I think
pride?
I've just got a Van Gogh skull
Oh.
smoking a cigarette on my shirt. So
Well, killing yourself by cigarettes is very American too, I guess.
Yeah.
So no, because like, here we are. We're talking about like open lawlessness in some ways. Solving your problems at the end of a gun. The idea that you lift up somebody as a hero, but when the hero needs help, you just kind of throw them away.
Mm-hmm.
This town, it's like every one of these people will say how much they love the marshal, but the moment that is shaken, they're willing to throw him out as the sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
to whatever it is that makes them feel safe.
Well, what's interesting, you can read this both ways. They could be right. They could be 100% right. If Will Kane leaves, nothing bad will happen to the town. And that's not the way you'd want moral people to act in this situation.
No, because they could be right, but at the same time, it is still putting Will Kane out to die, basically.
Right. And some of them think he made this bet himself anyway. Like
Yep.
he was wrong to do to Frank what he did.
Right, exactly. And it's, so there's, but there is this kind of thought where it's like, just don't get involved. Talk about all the stuff that, like, everybody loves to talk about how much they wouldn't hit their kid if they were misbehaving. But not many of those people will actually say something to the person at the supermarket that they witness hitting their kid. It's and while that is a completely different type of thing, the point is still there where it's like they may talk about how, hey, this guy's a bad guy. This guy's coming to town. This might be bad for us. But you know what? Let's not get involved. I don't want to have any extra blood on my hands outside of possibly Will Kane.
Well, yeah, and go ahead.
I was just going to switch gears a little bit on keeping on with the John Wayne bit. John Wayne fucking accepted the Best Actor award at the Academy Awards for Gary Cooper on his behalf for this movie. Like,
really?
Yes, because Gary Cooper was on location and couldn't attend, and he asked John Wayne to accept the award for him. And this is what John Wayne said when he accepted it. This is just bonkers shit. He said, I'm glad to see they're giving this to a man who is not only most deserving, but has conducted himself throughout the years in our business in a manner that we can all be proud of. Now that I'm through being, that's kind of weird. Wait, now that I'm through being such a good sport, I'm going back to find my business manager and agent and find out why I didn't get High Noon instead of Cooper.
That is wild.
Isn't that fucking wild?
So all of this, obviously, this John Wayne's side of the story came out much later, because there's no way people knew that he declined it and why he declined it if he was going to say this.
Probably wasn't public knowledge.
Right.
There's no internet.
Yeah, exactly. But Hollywood insiders knew.
Well, yeah, they're probably laughing at him.
So he's putting on a show, all right? Because
like,
a popular Western that I wasn't in that I could have won the award for.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's real fucked up.
It's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean this would go on for, I mean, because Howard Hawks comes back and makes Rio Bravo as a opposite to this movie.
Yeah, with John Wayne, like 7 years later. I mean, talk about a grudge. Yeah. It's so weird.
But here's the thing: 20 years later, Zinnemann's still talking about how Howard Hawks needs to get off my ass about that movie.
Right.
That was in 1973.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So,
I mean, Rio Bravo is a good movie, but yeah, there's no nuance to it. It's
yeah, and this movie is almost entirely nuanced, even to the point again to where you have to watch Gary Cooper's face, not listen to the words he says, because he is keeping a stiff upper lip when he speaks.
Totally.
But his eyes are draining.
Oh yeah.
It's like you can see, like they start to almost turn downward, that he's so beaten down by the fact that this was a town that he protected for however many years, possibly even a decade, and now they're just throwing him out with the garbage. It is, and I guess we could kind of say that this is I mean, there is something here that you can connect to with the whole idea of naming names and blacklisting and getting involved and being, and how, I mean, because there is this kind of sense that Will Kane has become kind of a pariah in this town. People don't want to speak to him anymore. People don't want to stand up for him anymore. And I mean, that's probably going on.
But they're also shamed to see him, a lot of them. It's like they love the man. They clearly love the man, but they can't do what he's asking. None of them are willing to do what he's asking. So they, like you said, his best friend sends his wife to the door. Martin, the kid goes to find Martin and finds him, and Martin's like, nope, nothing to do with this. And these are people that love Kane.
I mean, it was clearly written from the perspective of, what happens to you when you're blacklisted in Hollywood, right? Like when your friends don't want anything to do with you. Those people who quote unquote loved you, now you're a liability to them,
right?
Right, for nothing that you did in particular,
Right,
right? In
because
fact,
Carl Foreman was blacklisted because
and then
Stanley
the man
Kramer,
was actually blacklisted. Yeah, like
right,
he was
because
writing this movie with this in mind, and then was fucking blacklisted. He became Gary Cooper
right,
in this movie. He became Will Kane. It's crazy.
he became blacklisted because Stanley Kramer
Yep.
had to basically name him before he was named.
Yeah.
And it was getting and Kramer was getting a little pressure from his bosses at Columbia or whatever. It's crazy. I mean,
it is crazy.
It is insane that he becomes the very guy that he wrote and got nominated for an Oscar for.
He did not name any names. He did admit to past membership, but that he was no longer a member, which was very true. Gary Cooper knew this. Gary Cooper actually went to bat for him on several occasions to really kind of testify to his character, but I guess character witnesses weren't allowed during these hearings.
Well, yeah, because it was a fucking Shanghai job.
Yeah,
I mean, this is one of many dark moments in our history.
Oh, most certainly. It was modern witch hunt.
And if they didn't believe you if you were called in front of them, either name names or at the very best you're going to be gray listed.
Yeah.
And at the very worst, your life is ruined forever, to the point that even decades later, when was it Elia Kazan who was blacklisted, and then he gets a special Oscar, and they make a point for some people not to applaud him.
Yeah.
In the broadcast. I mean, it is insane.
Yeah.
That was 40 years later or whatever it was. So
Foreman never worked. Well, he worked in Hollywood again, but it wasn't for a very long time. He went to England. He made it to England before his passport was revoked, but then he couldn't really leave England. He's kind of stuck there. The man co-wrote Bridge on the River Kwai, which won Oscar for Best Screenplay, but it wasn't. He didn't get any screenwriting credit for it until decades later. Yeah, I mean,
and meanwhile, John Wayne has always said that he never regretted having helped run Foreman out of this country.
Yeah, I mean, it's unreal. And this is around when Gary Cooper started to kind of change his tune on blacklisting. He was he saw what it did to Foreman and other people that he respected and loved, and he became pretty outspoken in kind of contradicting his earlier outlook, whereas people like John Wayne just dug in.
Yeah, it should also be noted that Carl Foreman was born in Chicago, Illinois. He was ejected essentially from this country that he was actually a citizen of.
Yeah.
So that's fucked up. This is but yeah, so anyway, I guess we can get back into
now back to the movie.
Yes.
Roll it. So you have Ramirez, right? She's a central figure, kind of, I don't know if I'd call it moral, but she's definitely the judge of what a person's character should be, because she does it to Harvey, she does it to Amy, and she does it to Will, right? She tells Harvey, you're not a man, your shoulders aren't broad enough, or you might have broad shoulders, but men do other shit. Kane is a man.
Right. She basically calls him a little boy to his face, which is fantastic.
Yes, which sets him off to find Kane. And you think this movie does a wonderful job of making you think one thing and then it's the other, because I'd assumed at this point he was going to go help Kane. He's like, oh, you don't think I'm a man? I'm going to prove I'm a man, and I'm going to get into this gunfight.
And probably die.
Instead he tries to throw Kane on a horse.
Yeah. Yeah, he just does what the rest of the town wants to do, but in a physical way.
Yeah, more forceful way. Yeah,
right.
And they get in a fight, and Kane basically knocks him out and throws a bucket of water on him. And then do we ever see him again? The rest of the movie? I don't think we see him again.
I don't think we see him again. I don't know if he's there at the end with the crowd, but if he is, he's not really featured.
So that's basically the end of the story. His story is that he really isn't up to snuff. He probably didn't deserve to be marshal. One, because he's a baby, and two, because he got his ass kicked by an old man.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when the old man is Gary Cooper, that might be acceptable.
He's a pretty big guy.
Yeah. He is tall, man.
Yeah,
Holy
he's
crap.
tall as fuck. He like barely fits into Lon Chaney's doorway.
Yeah.
And
Which
Lon
is
Chaney's
funny
no
because
small man either.
Yeah, and what's funny is that Lon Chaney barely fits the other way.
Yeah. Right.
Wide. Yeah.
His name is Long Chaney, right?
Wide Chaney.
Wide Chaney.
There is like one of the few sort of comedic elements in the movie is after the fist fight, Will Kane goes to
He goes to the barber, doesn't
LaBarber, who also is the local mortuary owner.
he? Yes.
And he had told that man earlier, we're going to need at least
make
2 more coffins.
Yeah, how many coffins do we have? 2. We're gonna need at least 2 more. Get to work.
Yeah.
So Will Cage's in there, and he just needs to get like basically
Cleaned
just
up.
kind of cleaned up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's bleeding. His knuckles are bleeding. His face is bleeding. So the barber helps get him cleaned up, but he tells the guy in the back who's hammering coffins to knock it off for a while until he tells him to start. And then as Gary Cooper's leaving, as Kane's leaving, he says, "You can tell your man he can continue his work." That's pretty good.
Yeah. But
So-
it is that reminder, right? Someone's going to die. People are going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it gets to the point, at the last hour, or not the last hour, last minute, Will Kane has no help. He knows it. He's resigned to it, and he writes out his last will and testimony. I mean, he's kind of expecting to die.
Yep.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, this is a really, really cool climax here because he doesn't have help from the town, but the town becomes his help.
Mm-hmm.
Because he knows where he can go and keep an eye on everybody. But but as that scene starts, or that sequence starts, there's that really cool like high shot
Oh, the
where
crane
it shows
shot, yeah.
that he's completely and totally
Alone.
It's the did you mean to say it's a Kane shot?
Yes.
But,
yes, because just to say, Amy and Ramirez have gotten on a train.
Yeah, Amy and Helen they take off.
They pass him on the street in a carriage on the way to the train.
And Amy only kind of glares at him a little bit.
Yeah, and that look back.
Ramirez looks back. She does not.
Right, but he is a long shot of him just looking and watching them go, and then the crane comes up and he walks down the road alone.
And everybody is shuttered into whatever building they're in, like the pussies that they are.
Ramirez, real quickly, Ramirez had her other moment with Amy where she said, "What kind of woman would leave their husband? Like, if it were me, I'd grab a gun and fight with him." And she's like, "Well, why don't you?" And she's like, "Well, he's not my man.
He's not my man.
He's not,
But if you're going to go, why don't you wait here and then we'll go to the train together?" And that's what they do.
Yeah.
And they pass the Miller gang.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Frank Miller is getting off the train. And that scene, like where everything, like I said, they're building tension this whole time. And Kane is writing his last will and testimony, and then the train whistle blows. And you're like,
It's noon.
it's like it's weird because it's kind of like a tension release, but it's also like high anxiety too.
Yeah, it's done in montage, like an editing and in montage where the train whistle is blowing and it's kind of showing you these close-ups of all the main players that are left, right? It's really well done. This movie was also nominated for best editing. Did it win for best editing?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
The 3 that it didn't win was best picture, best director, and best writing.
Yeah.
So it won the other ones it was up for, which was editing, actor, score, and song. So what's great is, Frank Miller, it's like, so you're wondering, it's like, maybe this is all for naught. Maybe Frank Miller just wants to have a beer at the place and apologize to Will Kane. I never thought that, but maybe that is the case. But no, he gets off the train, and his buddy comes up. It's like, "We got your guns over here," and Lee Van Cleef fits those guns onto Frank Miller. like that like, oh no, he's here to kill somebody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, because he could have just said, no, I don't need those anymore, guys. I'm reformed. Nope.
Yeah, because there is sort of that possibility, right? Like Will Kane doesn't believe it, the town doesn't believe it, the people who've left don't believe it, but you as an audience viewer still kind of hold on to a string of hope or doubt that this is going to end in a gunfight, right? Like maybe, just maybe, Frank won't.
Right. Maybe he ends up, maybe there's beef with his gang when he gets
Sure.
off and then he has to team up with, with Will Kane or something,
Maybe
but the
he
whole
gets
thing
off the
is,
train and says, "I just want to dance." Sorry.
and then they dance and then
Yeah.
there's a whole dance scene
I
and it's the
also
most
love- I
surprising
also-
ending of any movie ever made.
I also love. I kind of forgot the significance of high noon in this movie not being like we're meeting in the street at noon when the clock strikes noon where we're going to draw our guns. Like that's kind of what you think of when you hear of high noon, right?
Yeah.
In a
Right.
Western, but really it's not that at all. It's just
It's just the
It's-
arrival of the
it's-
train.
it's the arrival of a train. It's still a date with destiny and a ticking clock, obviously, but it holds a much different connotation than I think most moviegoers accustomed to Westerns are used to.
Yeah,
Right.
you'd expect two guys to meet in the street, walk
Right.
10 paces, and then shoot
Yep.
each other.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally not that, for sure.
Right.
The yeah, and oh god, there was something else I was trying to think of, but it left me. I was thinking about that whole, because what's funny is that Amy doesn't get off of the train. She gets on the train. She never looks at the Miller gang.
Yeah.
It's Helen that looks back at the Miller gang.
Yeah.
And then continues on. Amy doesn't get off the train until the first gunshot is heard.
Mhm.
Yep.
So that should also tell you that train isn't that far out of town.
No.
It's right the
No.
fuck there, and it's just on the outside of the main street.
Right, and that first shot was Kane shooting. I don't know if it wasn't Van Cleef. It was one of the other guys gets shot, and she comes running up the street thinking it's Kane,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she looks like in the back of your mind. I hear the voice of Ramirez like, "I would grab a gun and I would help them," and you see the gun just lying there. They don't show her pick it up, but you're like,
So
she's gonna pick that up.
I feel like I missed somebody get killed. I'm not sure who, because the very first guy that gets killed, Gary Cooper Will Kane just kind of pops up around a corner.
Yeah.
And
He says, "Hey,
fires-
Miller,"
Yeah,
and
Miller,
they
and
turn
he
around
fires
and
first. Essentially, it's kind of like a simultaneous, but it's
yeah,
like
because when they come into
Will Kane
town,
isn't waiting to find out.
No, no.
If these guys are gonna be cool or not. He's fucking guns blazing, right?
right. I mean, and part of this might be that he's off balance because he doesn't have anybody to stand with him.
Yeah.
So he's maybe angry.
But he gets that first guy, and
Yes,
I think
he does.
and I think that's who Amy sees
Yes,
and
it
grabs
is.
the gun. But somebody else dies.
Right.
That I
So
miss.
they're right.
Because Gary Cooper had to kill two guys
Yes, he did.
for the final two.
He does.
I
Right.
missed the second guy die. I don't
Was
know
the
why.
second guy, did he shoot down on the second guy?
He was hiding in the barn, and the second guy walks in.
Oh,
And he
yes.
shoots down on him before they start throwing in the Molotovs. Where Gary
Right.
Cooper's like, "Man, we're in a tight spot."
I thought
Um,
the editing of that part was a little sloppy, but yeah,
Watch it again. It looks pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
he shoots him clearly.
Oh no, I know, but I mean with the whole cutting of the Molotovs coming in and kind of I don't know. I think I just got a little disoriented by that
Yeah.
scene. That's probably why I missed it. Yeah.
Gotcha. But yeah, he shoots the second guy there, and then he saves all the horses.
Yes.
Right.
That was cool. And he kind of like ducks down on one of them, rides it out so that they can't see him.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they do still see him, and they start, but not until it's too late. He's like out of range, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because and that's when they come into town, Cooper's basically just hiding behind a post. Really, he knows where they're coming from. He knows what post gives him that first shot, and that's when because basically that's when he takes the first shot.
Yeah.
Is that he's hiding there, and before they can even see him, he calls out to them so that he can,
Yep.
basically get the first guy.
Yep.
Yeah, and they
And-
kind of gave themselves away because they broke glass. I'm
Yes,
not
because
sure.
one guy steals a bonnet.
I was wondering what that bonnet was
Yeah.
about.
I was
I
too.
wonder if they planned on putting that on Will's head when they shot him.
Oh,
I assume so. Maybe that's like
Because,
demasculating when you kill somebody or
I
something. I'm
wondered
guessing.
that because the
yeah,
whole
I thought
thing
that
was
odd,
that,
though.
well, but they intended on doing it because Frank Miller says, "Hey, man, not yet. We're not there yet." And he's like, I just saw it and was gonna, and they basically, it's like, "Hey, I'm here. I might as well get it." But that's what I thought, was that they were gonna put the bonnet on his head as kind of an extra twist of the knife.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
So then, um, after the barn, at this point, um, Grace Kelly gets herself stuck in a room,
Yeah.
and but she sees one of the guys outside, and she can see that he's got the drop on Will.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she shoots him in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
you don't even know it's her. You hear the gunshot, you see the guy fall, and then you see her in the window with the gun. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And but that also gives her position away to Frank.
Yeah.
Who then goes and gets her, and makes the mistake of kind of roughing her up a little bit. But that also totally just leaves him open to be blown away by Will.
Yeah, so he's in the middle of the street with Amy. It's Amy, right?
Yeah, Amy.
Yeah. And he's calling out to Will.
It's like, I got your lady, or
I got your lady, and Will says, "You let her go, and we'll settle this." And he comes out. Grace Kelly, Amy, she like claws
his face,
at his face, at his
then-
eyes,
yeah,
which
and then
is just
he throws
enough
her.
moment for her to get away, get
No,
clear
he
of
throws
him.
her. He
Yeah,
throws her.
yeah, that's right. He kind of pushes her off of him, and in that split second moment, Will Kane shoots him dead,
Yeah,
gets him. So Amy really saved his bacon.
pretty
I mean,
much.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, so interesting here that the first words you hear in this movie are the theme song, which is
Yeah.
"Do not forsake me, oh my
Oh, my
darling,
darling. Yep.
until I shoot Frank Miller." Like the whole entire movie is
It's summed
described
up,
to
yeah.
you in the first minute.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like if Amy doesn't come back, 1,000% he's dead.
Yeah.
1,000%. And she does come back, and she saves his bacon, as one of you two so eloquently stated.
Saves his bacon. But yeah, I mean that couldn't be more clear from when she shoots the guy in the back, right? I mean he's got the drop on Kane, most definitely.
Yep.
He's a second away from death. And in that moment, Amy has to practice some situational ethics, right? She has to determine, at what point is pacifism, morally unacceptable, right?
Yeah.
As she makes that choice. Yeah.
Well, and also because I think this also explains a couple of things, where it's like, you can have all of the ethics and all the morals that you want on the macro, but
Mhm.
almost always people are going to go with the micro
Right.
ethics and morals. You see that time and time again whenever there's an election. People might say it would be nice if, but at the end of the day, I got to vote this way or whatever. And sometimes that doesn't work out for things that might be nice. But at the other point, but then there are other things where it's like, on the macro, think about all those people in that church. On the macro, they think that they're good, righteous people. But on the micro, oh, we're not going to help you. Just leave. Just
Well,
leave and get
it
it,
doesn't
so we
help.
don't see you.
It
If
doesn't
we don't
help
see you, we don't feel guilty.
that their spiritual advisor basically like gives them license to be cowards.
Well, yeah,
in that
because
scene as well.
because he also is like, well, I don't know. I haven't really thought. I haven't pondered this. Get the fuck out
It's
of
like
here.
bullshit. It's like, on one hand, the Bible says, thou shalt not kill, and blah,
But
blah,
then we
blah.
hire people to do it for us.
to do it for us, right? But then he's like, I cannot advocate for any of my flock to
See,
engage in
again,
violence, and it's
on the
just
macro,
it's so wishy-washy.
exactly.
Yeah,
And but at the end of the day, there is an individualism to this, right?
yeah,
Because uh, on the macro, you see Gary Cooper protecting the town, because he may think this isn't just going to blow over for you.
right,
But on the micro, he knows that if he doesn't deal with this right now,
right,
it's going to haunt him.
right,
And he's never going to feel comfortable or safe. And
right,
it's going to drive him probably to an early grave anyway.
right,
So, so again, it's kind of he individually makes a decision. He does want help. He should probably get help, but it's, but everybody else's micro ethics and micro moralism just basically turns like what's the opposite of turn the other cheek? Is it turn the other cheek? Because like they basically just kind of turn away from him.
Well, it's abandonment. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not turning the other cheek. I mean, that's yeah, it's just straight up abandonment. They're
Yeah.
they're unwilling to help because it's dangerous to them.
Right.
But I mean, this movie after Frank gets it ends fast. I
Yeah,
mean,
but he does the right thing too. He chucks that 10 star
it
right
chucks the
into,
tin into the dirt. The town, everyone in the town comes out
to congratulate him.
Yeah, to congratulate him, and it's like
And he has
you motherfuckers. He doesn't have one word for him, but
he
he
just
should
helps
say.
Amy. He helps Amy onto
but
the
if he were to
carriage.
say "you motherfuckers," I would have understood.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He tosses the tin. He helps Amy into the carriage. Like their relationship is now fucking strong, right?
Oh, sure.
Like their marriage has gone through the ringer in the last 2 hours, but they are now strong. He helps, the only person in town to really actually show that they loved him. Helps her into the carriage and fucking gets out. It's like,
Yeah.
you're done with you people. Yep.
There are a couple of
The end.
The end.
It says the end. So here's the funny thing. Susan and I both missed the second guy get killed. I don't know how, but we did. And we thought there was another guy just like lingering out there, right? That they forgot about. And we had ourselves convinced. We've both seen this movie, but we had ourselves convinced that Grace Kelly dies and that she was going to get shot by that guy as they were like riding out of town, and it was going to be the super downer ending. But thankfully that didn't happen.
And then Gary Cooper falls to his knees, looks up into the sky with both fists clenched. It's like, no! And then that's how he won his Oscar?
Yeah.
I thought, based on what the guy said earlier in the church, that Will Kane and Frank Miller and Amy, for that matter, since she came back, all died, and the town covers it up and just moves on. Like there was never a shooting here. That's kind of the way I'd read
That's
like a modern
ending.
remake of it. Yeah.
Oh no, that's the don't worry about it, Jake. It's Chinatown ending.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
1000%.
Definitely it is.
Yeah. That's being written by by
Rubbertown.
Yeah. That's super nihilistic for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
This movie is fairly nihilistic because even in the end, there is no real celebration.
No.
It's just, again, self-preservation, right? Like just trying to survive. There's no victory by anyone. At least that's not the way I read it. It's not a victory.
I don't think it's a victory, but I feel pretty good about Will Kane and Amy's marriage, right? I feel good about them. I feel like they have like this whole new thing in front of them that's really beautiful, right?
Yeah, except for she's a pacifist who had to shoot someone in the back.
She's
and
going to have some
be emotionally
PTSD.
scarred
She's
for
going to
life.
have some PTSD. Yeah.
But again, it's situational moral.
From a moral standpoint, I think it's conscionable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
I think that she'll probably wrestle with it, but at the end of the day, she didn't see her father and son die or brother die. Like that's one of her reasons for being a pacifist, is because both of
She stood
both are,
by.
she stood by and watched her father and brother die at the hands of gun violence.
Doing the right thing, as she said, and
Right.
that was her whole like argument against Will Kane staying. Is like, look,
Yeah.
you are doing the right thing, but you should not do it. And even his buddy Martin says the same thing. Like, it's all for nothing, Will. Like,
Yeah.
doing the right thing will get you nowhere. Even if you're honest, you'll end up poor and busted like
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
The American dream, everybody.
Yeah,
Yep.
which is kind of where I thought this movie was heading. And I get what you're saying. Like, I feel good about their future, but I didn't feel good about the end of this movie. It's more of a thinker than anything.
Well, yeah, it's not triumphant by any means, but it could have ended in a lot more despair.
Yes, absolutely. The way I thought it was going to end would have been way more despairing.
Yeah.
So Chuck, you asked if there were ever any remakes or sequels. The answer is yes, actually.
Interesting.
There was a TV movie sequel, High Noon Part 2, The Return of Will Kane. That's the worst title ever. That was 1980, aired on CBS. Lee Majors and Catherine Cannon. Elmore Leonard actually wrote the original screenplay, so that might actually be interesting.
I bet that is interesting.
I did know that Outland in 81, directed by Peter Hyams, was based on that because Sean Connery basically is a Will Kane type of character. But that's on a space station. I actually want to watch that. I might watch that this weekend. Anyway, 2000, Kramer's Widow produced a remake for TV with Tom Skerritt and Michael Madsen. That also sounds interesting.
Huh.
Oh, yeah.
And then in 2016, Karen Kramer, which is probably their daughter, signed an agreement with Relativity Studios for a feature film remake of High Noon, a modernized version set in the present day at the U.S.-Mexico border. The deal collapsed when Relativity declared that was a stupid idea. Oh, wait, no, declared bankruptcy following year. We don't need a gritty reboot of High Noon, everybody. That's not one where I suspect they're going to be gunning down a Mexican guy.
What's interesting too is that
John Wayne would probably love that one.
Fred Zinnemann considers his A Man for All Seasons about Thomas More and the was King Henry VIII. He considers that to be kind of a cousin to High Noon. Again, about a man in a conflict of conscience.
Interesting.
A Man for All Seasons is obviously a little more religious, for lack of a better word. Saint Thomas, he's a saint. Thomas More, he was the king's counselor. Basically, he's like number one guy. And when Henry VIII wanted a divorce and decided to kind of create the whole Church of England so that he could get a divorce and split away from the Catholic Church, St. Thomas More stood up against him and to his own peril. Yeah. So there you go.
Have you ever
History
read
lesson?
Have you ever read A Superman for All Seasons? That's an excellent story.
That is good. That's good. Yeah.
I would highly recommend that, Chuck, if you haven't read that.
I have not.
It's very good.
This is interesting. We didn't plan it this way, but this is a really good precursor to next week's movie. Because watching High Noon again and having watched a lot more of Sergio Leone since the last time I saw High Noon, it's very clear to me that Leone was a big fan of this movie. And then I read something somewhere too that when he was making Fistful of Dollars, I believe that was the first one of the trilogy, I think.
It is.
He asked Sergio Leone, or I'm sorry, she's not Sergio Leone. He asked Ennio Morricone to make the music sound like Dmitri Tiomkin.
Interesting. Well, and he also brings on Lee Van Cleef, right? Which is probably But Dmitri Tiomkin did the music for this, but he also did the music for
the one that John Wayne made. That was the response to this. What the hell was the name of that again?
Rio Bravo.
Rio Bravo. Yeah, and he specifically wanted Morricone to emulate the horns from his score from Rio Bravo, which I think is interesting. But yeah. So that's what next week's movie is: The Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Yes, it is. You know, what's interesting is we got High Noon that has Lee Van Cleef, then into The Good, Bad, and the Ugly that has Lee Van Cleef and Clint Eastwood, which then rolls into the following week with The Unforgiven.
Yep. Those two we planned together.
Yes, because
for
of
obvious
Clint
reasons.
Eastwood.
Yeah, but I hadn't really thought about the Leone connection to High Noon. But I mean, it's especially the close-ups in High Noon. That is something that Leone did quite a bit in his westerns.
Well,
is there anyone? Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say I will also tie something else from Unforgiven back to High Noon, which is a lot of facial acting.
Yeah.
A lot of really good facial acting, and Unforgiven actually has one of my favorite lines of any movie ever.
Cool.
We'll look forward to that in a couple of weeks.
Well, those are our next 2 weeks.
But Chuck, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say something dumb like I wonder if there's anyone from The Unforgiven in our fourth movie, and that would be very interesting. If all the movies were connected by an actor.
Though that would be interesting. Although the last two are connected by way of Outlaws.
Yes.
And the fourth movie, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, I picked it not because of Sam Peckinpah. I picked it because one of Bob Dylan's most popular songs actually comes from that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
it is interesting that we've got, we don't have any John Huston or Howard Hawks
or John Wayne. Although we'll talk shit about John Wayne all day,
right? But we really have like kind of covered a lot of major eras and big heavy hitters of Western directors. I mean, High Noon. I mean, Fred Zinnemann he wasn't really known as a Western director, but High Noon is clearly one of the greatest, if not the greatest, considered greatest Western ever made.
Someday we are going to get back to Fred Zinnemann because I do think we're going to do Day of the Jackal someday.
Fred Zinnemann made a lot of great movies. But then obviously Peckinpah is probably most known for The Wild Bunch. So we're going to do this one instead, which I don't believe I've ever seen. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
James Coburn, though. There you go.
James Coburn, that's Chris Christopherson, Jason
Robards.
Big.
Those are big Western actors.
We've done, those are all three big Western actors for sure.
And
we've actually done a Jason Robards Western before.
Yes.
And then we've got Unforgiven, obviously. Two Eastwoods. Kind of like two sides of a dollar, if you will. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Unforgiven. And Unforgiven was obviously directed by Clint Eastwood, kind of picking up the mantle from Leone, which is so fascinating. That's one of I think one of the coolest just concepts in Western history. And then our last one is the probably what you would consider a modern revisionist Western is the assassination of Billy the Kid.
No, Jesse James.
Or sorry, the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, which is easily the most recent.
I got our connection beside the thing because Bullet from the Gun of Robert Ford is an Elton John song. So we got a couple of pop culture reference.
Tenuous at best.
Yeah, but I know, but it's how I know Robert Ford before I ever knew anything about what he was, So leave me alone, all right? Sometimes you got to learn history some other ways. So anyway, yeah. So Good, Bad, and the Ugly is next week. I know what I am. I don't know. You guys can fight over whichever descriptors you guys are. I know which one I am.
I'm clearly bad. So Chuck, you can be good because I know Jeff's ugly.
Yep.
That's where I was going. Anyway, so that is next Wednesday. Chuck, where can people follow us?
Oh, they can follow us on the Twitters. They can follow us on Facebook. They can follow us on YouTube to find out when our episodes drop. Where else can they follow us?
Instagram.
Instagram, yeah, true.
Instagram. And so you can also subscribe to us at various podcast sites like SoundCloud, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and Audible. So you can find that will actually tell you when a new episode is there, I think.
And
It'll
all
just
of that
tell
is
you
on
this.
filmseizure.com.
And everything's
All
on
of
filmseizure.com. Also on filmseizure.com, you have Monster Mondays. That's my show where I talk about monsters. And we didn't talk too much about Lon Chaney Jr. here. Don't worry, because I've talked a lot about Lon Chaney Jr. on Monster Mondays. But episode number 201, starting off another fresh batch of 200 Monster Mondays this upcoming Monday with the Doctor Who serial State of Decay, the one time that the Doctor and friends went up against literal vampires, literal Draculas in E-space, which was kind of a different space, not like normal space, also known as in space. Anyway, so that is on the docket here. Upcoming this Friday at my website, bmovieenema.com, I will have an article for Steel and Lace. That sounds sexy and cold.
It is.
Cool. I knew, Chuck, that you'd seen it. So
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that's what's coming up. So guys, I think we're doing all right here. I think we did it. I think we talked about High Noon. I think we talked about the deep business. We talked about what's coming up. I think there's only one thing left to do, and that's to wrap things up. So let me just say that I am Deputy Marshal Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I have not, nor have I ever been a member of the Communist Party.
Says you.
And you have been listening to Film Seizure.
And we're blacklisted.